as we continue to quote level up in our own life and we gain perspective, and we there's not as much gray area in our life as there used to be. I haven't let as many things slide. I don't let things slide like I used to. As I gain more courage and confidence and I gain more clarity in my own life, I'm clear about what I want and what I don't want, who I want to be around, who I don't. Mm-hmm. And as a result of living that myself, I have clarity around those that I want to associate with.
Welcome to Wealth Untethered, your guide to the principles and mindset of a genuinely wealthy life. This podcast explores universal laws, principles, and strategies that lead to wealth and fulfillment. We delve into topics like investment, cash flow, business, estate and legacy planning, longevity, health, science, and more. All in an attempt to examine and challenge your mindset about what's possible for you. To learn more about Wealth Untethered, visit our website, wealthuntethered.com. Remember, our insights are not direct financial advice, so consult with your financial team before making any decisions based on the topics discussed in this show.
So when I first moved to Utah, actually I was probably maybe a couple years in, some just guys that I knew, they invited me to this like business conference. I was like, business conference? So yeah, we have this great opportunity. And I was like, well, okay. And I was new. I think I was like last year of school at the University of Utah. So I go to this conference and like everyone's like jumping around and energy and these guys on stage and like they're like saying this is the lifestyle you can live, and they had like Ferraris and like pictures on yachts and stuff. I'm like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
And it was some like MLM thing, selling like fat burner pills or something like that. And I bring it up because like my buddy that like invited me was like all in on this stuff, and the whole thing came crashing down. But it just taught me a lot about sensationalism, and I think sometimes like passion, conviction, confidence, right? It's huge, right? When you go all in on something that like but then there's like some sensationalism that people fall victim to, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know, maybe it's just Utah is like the epicenter of like MLM stuff. I don't know. But
there are a few.
Yeah. But I would say the hardest experiences I have, which ended up being like the best experiences for me, was really relationships with people, right? And I learned, right, that sometimes people operate, especially when things go sideways, off of their instinctive need to survive, right? And it ends up being at the expense of somebody else. And I feel for me, right, I had some pretty early experiences, right, that just taught me that, hey, you build relationship with somebody, you work together, you're creating synergy, and they can turn on you. And it's happened to me, I would say three or four really different. It has had 3 or 4 times, but it was a little bit different, and just taught me that being in relationship with people is necessary to a fulfilling life. At the same time, again, being tethered. When you tether yourself emotionally to a relationship, sometimes there's unintended consequences. So for me, what I've learned right through all of these experiences is, I'm very specific in the way I develop relationships with people, right? Who I hang out with, why I hang out with them, who I associate with, because again, I tether because I love people. I love you. Like we're like brothers. There's a few other people that I'm really close with in a similar way. Not many, but it's one of those things where like I do it more by design than I have in the past, just based on my experiences. And the design is when times get tough, what people do right in those times says a lot about their character, their integrity. And I'm not saying that that's always the way they respond, right? If something goes sideways, I think sometimes people make a mistake and realize, oh man, that's not how I should have done it, and learn from it, fail again, but handle that failure, that obstacle, right, in a principled, ethical, moral way. And for me, a lot of the business relationships that I've created requires a variable, right, where I know people's failures. I know what they've done, their business failures, personal failures, but they're open about it, and they essentially have found a way to use it as their superpower. You've done that in spades, and there's several others. But those that don't, either they don't have the experience yet, and I don't want to be their experience. I don't want to be their experience.
Well said.
Or they've had the experience and they've hidden it or suppressed it.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like it's something that I've experienced, and I know we had a kind of a conversation to talk. This is our bonus episode, but have had conversations because I know it's happened to you.
Yeah.
Right. That you've been disappointed. I mean, you've had partnerships taken from you, right? That wasn't intentional, but taken from you because of accident. Plane crash. So I don't know. I just feel like relationships are some of our most valuable assets, probably our most valuable assets. People are the most valuable assets to us. But at the same time, they could also be the biggest liabilities.
100%.
And so learning like how to discern the difference between asset and liability, I think, is a superpower, especially in business, but I would say also in personal life, because you can associate that with who you hang out with.
Yep.
Right? If you hang out with someone that's self-deprecating, is depressed, it's anxious, it's complaining, it's blaming others, it's not taking responsibility for your life, you may not think that impacts you. It impacts you. And I would say these are just sometimes relationships you have to let go. And it could even be family members. But looking at your happiness, your success, your growth, if it's being anchored down and pulled down by people that, have that type of energy level and they're not willing to do anything with it.
Yeah. 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 We decided to do this bonus episode today because this has been a really big one for us in our life. And we wanted to share it with you. Patrick, as you're saying that, I was thinking about the human life value balance sheet, and very clear that relationships are a line item on the human life value balance sheet.
Where?
Well, it could be an asset or a liability, for sure. Yeah, just like you're talking about. One of those assets for me, not only yourself, definitely. This is really near and dear to me. When I lost all that cash and I was in my pit for just over 3 years, one of the people that assisted me, besides yourself, to crawl my way out of that pit was Garrett Gunderson. And leading up to that point to a conversation that we had in 2011, when I lost all that cash in 2007, I owed Garrett Gunderson $18,000, and I didn't have it. I didn't have 18 grand, but I had $50, and then I had $25, and then next thing you know, I had $250, and then I had $100, then I had $50, and it took me. He didn't charge me any interest. Took me about 5 years. Through 07, 08, 09, 2010, into 2011. I think through 2011, I had him paid off. And he has told that story. Maybe some of you that know him have heard Garrett tell this story from stage. That's me. He's told this story from stage.
Because he told me that story. I never told you that. He told me that story.
Did he really?
This was years ago.
Yeah. And I get emotional thinking about it because Garrett Gunderson and I go back a long way. And he told me, and he's said this before, that I was the only or one of the very few that actually owed him money and paid him back through all of that. And Garrett Gunderson invited me. I'm getting super emotional thinking about it. He sat me down. We had a conversation after that, and he says, you can choose to leverage your past experiences to create moving forward. And that was part of the assistance and part of the training and stuff that I was going through to give me perspective to be able to take the action that I've taken. And then he invited me to do some business with him. And he started sending me a few leads. And at first, it was anybody making up to $75,000 of income. So Garrett Gunderson at the time in 2011 had a company called Freedom Fast Track. And Freedom Fast Track brought people in, and they charged them a tuition. They went through this whole financial process. And when it got time to talking about the number one strategy of what to do with cash they're going to relinquish control of and using this life insurance product to be able to store cash and leverage in their life, he would send them to me. And I worked with people that had an income up to 75 grand. And then within about 6 to 8 months, it was up to people that had that were making up to 150 grand and then 250 grand. And within a couple of years, I was working with every person that came through Wealth Factory. Everyone. And it was just incredible. It was incredible to have that experience. It was incredible to have that part of my life. Garrett and I went on to write What Would the Rockefellers Do? And we co-authored that book together, and he used it in many different ways personally, and I have and continue to use to this day. And what an incredible asset and tool that is. Garrett and I are still friends to this day. And we've had our peaks and valleys together, but it's definitely a line item on the human life value balance sheet of that of relationship capital. And there are other people that I've had relationships with that I don't anymore. And one thing also, Patrick, as you're saying that, I also felt that as you yourself, you, the audience, myself, as we continue to progress, we use this Infinity Wealth tool, we're progressing in our own life. For me, my experience has been that, and maybe some of you can relate, and I'd love to hear you speak about this, Patrick, that as we continue to, quote, level up in our own life and we gain perspective and we there's not as much gray area in our life as there used to be. I haven't let as many things slide. I don't let things slide like I used to. As I gain more courage and confidence and I gain more clarity in my own life, I'm clear about what I want and what I don't want, who I want to be around, who I don't. Mm-hmm. And as a result of living that myself, I have clarity around those that I want to associate with, those that have similar or same values as myself. And it's just been an incredible
But it's also
life.
standards. It's also
Standards too,
right?
yes.
So I would say values, often are kind of a guiding energy, right, for what we want to feel, right?
And
They're
behaviors too, standards and behaviors.
But standards I look at as what's acceptable to you, right? And I feel that as we've spoken about momentum, right, there has to be a forward moving set of standards, right? So I think what came to mind when you were talking is my little brother. So my little brother is an attorney, and him and I would say have a very similar perspective when it comes to our upbringing, right? And we associate things we learned that have empowered us, right? We also associate things that were hard about growing up that now have, in a sense, become superpower. But him and I, like we're in Southern Utah now, where we do a Memorial Day trip with our two families. But him and I feel like we've had conversations like this before, where his standard for where he's at professionally, has him and I really are looking at each other and appreciating each other, and essentially he's done incredible things in his career, right? And we kind of go back and forth and just say, like, listen, you've empowered me. You've empowered me, and you've like it again. That's the idea. Is like it's the environment. It's the environment that you're in.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes I've referenced this not on any of these shows, but there's a law of physics, right, which is thermodynamics. Second law of thermodynamics, which is entropy, right? Which is basically like, first law, energy can't be created or destroyed. Second law is energy is always transforming. It's like something is always breaking down. Something physical is always breaking down, and it's becoming something else. And so I heard a cool analogy once where they talked about, if a tree falls in the forest, right? It's a specific environment that energy is now dying, like the tree, and it's becoming something else. right? It's becoming part of the forest. It becomes, it becomes soil. It becomes food for the
Could
other
be
trees.
cut up and built into a home.
That too. So that's another example. But
Fuel to burn.
this specific one that's kind of like a passive type of environment. Okay. But a harsh environment full of friction and lots of energy is a swamp. So if a tree falls in the swamp, okay, the energy level of a swamp, right, is bacteria and organisms and
It's a higher level.
high concentration. So does the tree become, right, the exact same thing that it would become in a forest? And it's not, right? It becomes ultimately coal. And what does coal become? A diamond, the most, this one of the strongest elements on Earth.
Energy and
Now the tree had the capacity to become a diamond. Okay, but the environment in which it
Shaped it.
Essentially shaped the energy. So how I look at that in relation to us is what type of environment are we in, right? And the relationships that we have create.
are we conscious of that?
And most people aren't, right? But I'm very aware. Like who do I associate with? The neighborhood that I live in, right? The building that I have, the home that I live in.
People you associate with.
Yeah, and we have a good friend, right? Who I don't know if he does this consciously, but he essentially puts himself in an environment where he forces himself to conform to whatever the production level needs to be to operate at
And that works for him.
And that works for him. Now, I'm not saying it's everybody, but what I'm saying is the principle equally applies.
Yes.
Where you're at in life, whether it's your physical well-being, right? Whether it's your relationships, it's your profession, it's the money that you're making, it's the car you're driving. That has a massive difference, right? To essentially mold an environment of accountability that allows you to move in a certain way. If there isn't friction, right? If that environment is really passive, then you're going to just status quo and probably deteriorate. Okay, but if you are in an environment that has more friction, you will rise up.
Yeah,
but this is where I look at, again, relationships. I don't know. As I go into business with people, I'm very conscious of this. And as I've made investment, I've done business relationships, but I will not give something to someone who has not essentially experienced environments of friction that
You're
I
clear
know
about that today.
I'm super clear about that, right? Because essentially it's the saying, how you do anything is how you do everything.
Yeah.
Right. Now it's not absolute, but there is a lot of truth to that. And I remember I was at a Tony Robbins event once. So I did the Platinum Partnership for a couple of years, and a really good buddy of mine that I actually knew before became a Platinum Partner. So we would travel together and go to events together.
Cool.
And we were at an event and it was about ready to get started, and he leaned over and he says, because Platinum Partners, they get their own like little section. That's one of the perks of like that membership. And he's like, they just got those lanyards. They got those lanyards like somewhere else, and they just came and bought like.
You could feel that tell.
Well, he knew it somehow.
Oh, he knew, huh?
And he's the one that first told me. He's like, listen, like this is a heuristic for me, right? When I see people do something like that, okay, I assume that how they do anything is how they do everything. I would never do business with them ever.
Yeah.
And then something like that, a very similar experience happened just a few months after that. And it like solidified and it locked into me like, wow, you have to be super conscious of who you do business with, who you invest in, who you put risk in. And it was, essentially it was right before COVID. And we were taking my Cynthia's grandmother out to dinner. And it was a nice, nice restaurant, but it was during the winter, right? So there was snow and it was nasty. And, she's like in her 80s and her aunt was there. And so we're like walking up to the door and this dude cuts in front of us, right? And because we were like holding the door for her and she's like kind of inching her way in, because she's from Mexico and like this little Mexican lady, like inching her way in. So I could tell, yeah, I mean, someone would feel like, oh man, just get in the door. Like I got to get in the door.
Get in front of her.
So this dude like cuts in front of her. And then he goes up, right, and gets puts his name in front of ours, even though like we're holding the door, we're there, and it's something. It's seemingly insignificant, but I like look at it like, wow, and it was a business meeting. He was putting his name down for a business meeting, and they sat to the table right next to us, and I was listening in the whole time. And I'm like, there's no way in fucking hell I would ever do business with that guy. And that is what solidified to me. It's like, you got to be cautious, right? Because in the end, people are assets or they're a liability.
That's exactly right.
And I'm not saying do I put any blame on him or anything? I'm like, I hope he learns a lesson. Like, I hope he learns a lesson that teaches him that that's just like, it's not the right, that's not cool, man. That's not cool. And it applies to other areas of life. So.
Yeah. So how do you think someone gains that clarity? I have a few thoughts, but how do you think someone gains that clarity on who they'll do business with, who they won't, who they can trust, who they can't trust?
Either personal experience where they feel pain.
Yeah.
But again, I think that's the purpose of emotion. The emotions guide us, right? And so I think the emotion
And
of
it's
like
being aware of that, like being conscious of it.
yeah, they're essentially like signals, right? They're signaling that's not right. This is right. It's just weird. I think most people have like some sort of, I mean, obviously there's some sociopaths out there, but I think
Bullshit meter.
there's like a moral compass. Like look at prison. Like hard criminals, if somebody commits specific crimes there, if they're punished because they go to punished and they go to prison, but the other prisoners will actually like give them more punishment. Like especially for crimes against children, crimes against women.
Yeah.
Right? They will punish them more. Like, where does that come from?
Yeah.
So I feel like, there's these instincts, these emotions that we have that guide us. And so going to your question, how do you learn that? It's like, we're going to be disappointed by people, right? We disappoint people. I've disappointed tons of people. And so it's learning like, wow, I should have done this different. I should have done this different. So it's learning from it, but also being open to like, this is my story. Like I screw up and like I've treated my kids horribly, right? I've treated Cynthia horribly, like ways that, it's like, that's not who I am. That's not my best self. Like why, so you learn from that, right? You admit it, you understand it, and you use your experiences to be a better man, to be a better father, to be a better leader. So it's kind of part of the learning process. But I don't know. I look at sometimes when people are unwilling to share that. You don't know their stories behind it. Like I want to know. I want to know their hardship. I want to know what they've been through. I want to know.
And are they willing to share that, or like you were saying earlier, are they hiding that?
Are they hiding that?
Yeah. So experiences definitely, and you helped bring some of this out of me in the way you're answering that also. But it's the life that we live today. It's the life we live today. It's the progression. It's our commitment today. And we may not have it all figured out, but we're committed to continue to expand and grow. Yeah. And we want to be around, I want to be around, you want to be around other people that are committed to continue to expand and grow and to progress and to experience more and to be committed to extracting the lessons and applying them and sharing those with others. So those standards, those behaviors that we have, we're attracted to that in other people. Yeah. And then at the much deeper level, like you're talking about, what I heard you say is you're clear about where you're at in your life and the ingredients of what it's taken to get to where you're at and to be able to continue to progress the way that you want to. And part of those ingredients were having some sort of a hardship to be able to feel that and experience that because of what you learned and the compassion and the empathy and the commitments that it's given you in your own life that can't be learned from a book or heard or watched in a movie. They have to be experienced. And so you're clear about that. And in that clarity, you then will find those around you that meet that. I think it's beautiful.
Well, again, it's that environment, right? I think what is a friction environment, right? Obviously, you can associate with people that have really high standards for themselves, right? And that is going to be an environment of friction that compels you to grow, to rise to the standard of that group, to that environment. But I think the same goes to the realization of failure, right? It's like if you're in that environment, the friction is because you're going to have those signals of emotion that tell you this is hard, you're going to fail, you're going to make mistakes. But at the same time, the environment, I think, can teach you that, all right, that's part of the growth process. When you become physically fit, right? You literally tear muscles.
Yeah.
They tear.
Yeah.
To grow and to build, it tears.
And it can be painful
And
sometimes.
if it's not, you're not going to grow, right? But this is where like your body grows from it. It takes nutrients and it builds itself back up stronger, right? So I think there's some similar principles, right, to the environment of friction where you look at, you fail, right? You fall down, you make mistakes, you hurt others, you're hurt, okay? But you use it as fuel to grow.
Yeah. I'm thinking of our 11-month-old grandson, Weston, and how many times he's learning to walk. He's crawling, he's learning to walk, and he's fallen down. And he was just up here last week, and he fell down on the tile floor and got this big old bloody fat lip from falling down. But that's how he's learning. And he gets back up, and he falls down, and he gets back up, and he falls down, but he gets back up.
This is my son. He's 9. And, Weston, like he's obviously going to he's going to experience reality, right, in the physical environment, right, because it's not being held by your mom and your grandpa, and like you're going to fall and you're going to scuff your knee. But my son, this is probably like maybe 2-3 months ago, like we have an iron, and the iron has like a blue bottom, right? So it's like, so Cynthia was like, it's hot, don't touch it. And sure enough, he's 9 years old. He's like, oh, it's like blue. That's probably not hot. And touches it, and he starts screaming. It's like, I don't know. I think we're always, again, I think these are just, it's part of the process, right? But I think the way in which failure and friction is handled, really, it's a tell, right? It's a sign. It's a signal of other people, right? And who they really are. And again, it's especially with relationship, when you have partnership, whether it's legal partnership or business partnership or investment partnership or whatever, right? Employee relationships, there's going to be challenging times. What is going to happen in those times?
Yeah.
What are they going to do?
Yeah.
Right. And I think if you know about them, I mean, there's a whole like interview process that we use called top grading, and top grading, dude, it has like such incredible questions that you ask employees, right? And top grading, what it does is it helps you find patterns of their life based on
how they answer those questions.
And the questions all revolve around what were some of the most challenging times, right, before you left home? What were some of the most challenging times when you outside, when you were in college? What are the most challenging times when you're first employed? Now, obviously, you're asking more questions than just the challenges, right? You're trying to kind of shape an idea of what their character is and how that's manifested, right, in places previous to yours. But that top grading essentially is to validate what we're talking about, which is that pattern conducive for the role that you are hiring for? And do they have merit behind what they're going to bring to the company that could actually benefit the company and either I would say be a higher standard than where the company is at, which uplifts the others that are around them.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Their character.
For sure.
So, Patrick, as we conclude this episode, and this has been a lot of fun for me, I love that we brought this up during lunch and decided we want to do a little bonus episode on it. It's always fun for me. What are some things that we could leave the listeners with, and I'll come up with some myself, that would assist them in this awareness in their own life? So some of the things that I'm thinking about are what's working, what's not working. And so I would encourage all of you to look at your relationships, right? We've all heard this. We're the sum of the 5 relationships in our life.
We are. And it's kind of a cliche statement, but dude, there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
And so I would say, what can listeners do? I mean, again, this is how we're explaining reality. This is how we're explaining our life. I mean,
our experience.
I'm the first to say, like, it may not be an accurate interpretation of life, relationships, standards, how to grow. But it's not just me. I mean, the books that I've read, seminars I've been to, and just my observation, like I feel the environment you put yourself in, it influences your growth and who you are. So I would take inventory, especially human life value balance sheet. Take inventory of your assets. Take inventory of your liabilities. Yeah. Because if you're going to have relationships that are liabilities. Okay. Now, the thing is, it's like you can have extreme. You could have like low interest liability. You could have low interest liabilities that help you get into a house.
Yeah.
Or you could have high interest liabilities
said.
that don't do shit.
Yeah.
Right. So you got to evaluate that and then really look at, all right, what environment am I in? Do I have net assets in that category? Do I have enough people in my life that are holding me accountable? Like for you, like you hold me accountable. If you like showed up in a couple months and you were like fat and overweight, like, dude, what the hell are you doing? Like I would hold you accountable.
Sure.
Right. Do you have people that love you enough to hold you accountable? Do you have people, right, that are trying to live to a standard that is moving them forward, but it's subsequently going to help move you forward?
Yeah.
Like this was a big, I'll talk about you. It's like, I've done podcasts forever. It's like second nature to me because I've just done it for so long. But you went out on a limb, right? And you did something that was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Okay. But I knew you'd do it because I knew who you were and I knew it'd be uncomfortable, but I knew you'd do it.
Yeah.
Right. So those are the type of people, like you want them part of your life. Yeah. You want them to push you
corner.
in a positive way. And I know we have a mutual friend that I know pushed you hard a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And you shared, like, dude, you shared that with me, which is huge because what it said is like, hey, I'm not looking at this as like something's wrong with me and I failed and I'm letting people down. No, you took it as like fuel to be like, okay, that's a perspective. Maybe part of it's accurate, maybe part of it's not, but I'm going to use that right to fuel even more growth so that I can be more fulfilled and so that I can empower and benefit the lives of other people.
Yep. Well said. Well said. Yeah. If it triggers me, that's something for me to look at. And if it doesn't, then that's okay. Yeah. So I would encourage all of you to look at your life and go onto our website and wealthuntethered.com and pull up the Infinity Wealth tool. And there's a little exercise before the questions that you can help center yourself. It's something that Patrick and I do. It's an exercise that I love to do to center myself and then ask myself powerful questions because we love answering powerful questions. I do, you do, many people that we associate with, and I would say that you do also. So go in, center yourself, read through that, go through that exercise of some breathing and gratitude, and then ask yourself specifically, what's one thing that you can stop doing that you're doing right now that would get you closer to what you want? And if you're not sure and you have some confusion around that, then what that tells me is that you're not clear about what you want and why you want it. So maybe you start there. As you gain clarity around what you want and why you want it, when you go into the exercises of eliminating things that's taking you further away from that versus closer to it, you'll be able to identify those. Is that your experience also?
Totally.
Yeah. Well, Patrick, this has been a lot of fun for me, man.
Yeah. Thank you guys for listening to our bonus.
Yeah.
Our bonus half an hour. Half an hour. Holy crap.
Was it? Yeah. Enjoy. Go out. Challenge yourself. It's all in self-interest. We do it because it fulfills us, and we know deep down it creates the most for those around us.
But I would say the same to you. Like I have no idea who you are. I mean, I'm looking at a camera right now, but obviously there's going to be someone on the other side. You know, you got to recognize that we're these unique expressions of life, and like we have a very unique experience of life. But I think all of it has meaning, and has meaning to bring that to the world. Right. And I'm not sure what it is. And it's not going to be one thing. Right. But it could be, you know, a smile to someone you're crossing on the street. It could be like just to help your neighbor shovel their walk. Right. If there's snow there. I don't know what it is, but you bring something to life that will benefit the world in small ways and in big ways. So that I really believe that. And I feel that I've been given messages throughout my career, throughout my life, and I continue to, right, that have allowed me to believe that. And it helps me show up different to life. And so I hope that you can gain from our experiences and go out there and like make a difference, because I know you can.
And untether.
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 Thanks, everyone.